All right, everybody. I think we're going to get started. Thanks to everyone for joining us today and letting us know where you're calling in from. Got lots of folks from Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and apparently Richmond, Virginia, which is great. Thanks all for being here. So we are here today for our very first deep dive session of Feed the Spark called Not Another Boring Zoom Meeting. This is a series of events to help people kind of figure out the transition from in-person events to online events in a way that still keeps their audience really engaged and connected to their mission. Before we get started, I do want to make an acknowledgement of Jacob Blake and what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin on Sunday night. I personally am keeping Jacob and his family in my thoughts and prayers, especially as he continues to heal. So a few tech notes to share. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you're comfortable doing so, please turn on your video so we can see your faces. It's a great way for all of us to connect to one another. We do have closed captioning. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. There's a little caret icon where you can enable it and change the font size too. And if you'd like to see both the presentation and the speaker, there is a side-by-side view available at the top of your screen under View Options. So we're gonna dive right in. Feed the Spark is presented by Pollen and Events by Lady K. If you're not familiar with Pollen Midwest, we are a media arts nonprofit that uses narrative storytelling to foster empathy, encourage connection across difference, and inspire meaningful change. I am here today along with my colleague, Tom Leftis, who is our Program and Operations Associate at Pollen. And I'd love for Ryan to introduce himself as well.
Yes, greetings everyone. Events by Lady K creates events where every attendee feels welcome, celebrated, and included. And our goal is to change the world of hospitality, meetings, and events to be truly equitable and inclusive instead of maintaining a status quo that doesn't work for everyone. My name is Ryan Craning. I'm the founder and president of Events by Lady K. I use they, them, or he, him pronouns. And you can find me across social media platforms at these two handles.
Thanks, Ryan. So our agenda for today, for the next, I don't know, what time is it? 54 minutes or so. We're going to be talking about how to make your virtual events stand out. So how to keep your audience engaged, how to keep your audience connected to your mission or your purpose as an organization, and then how to keep your attendees connected to one another. Just a few housekeeping notes to share before we dive in. Feed the Spark is brought to you by the Bush Foundation. We appreciate their support and helping to bring this series to life. We collaborated with the Bush Foundation, hi Shaylin and other folks from Bush that are on the call, to create this series for their event sponsorship program grantees who are trying to make that transition from in-person to online as the pandemic kind of took hold. So that's why we're all here today. We appreciate that support. We will be sharing recordings of today's session as well as all of our future sessions on the Eventbrite online event page, which you should have access to from your registration. And then we also do send out a post-event email that will include a link to the recording, so that if you missed parts of it or you want to share it with colleagues or refer back to it later, you're able to do that. Today, we won't have time for any Q&A, but I do encourage everyone, if you have questions, to submit them in the chat. We have a lot of really awesome event people on today's call, so I encourage everyone to respond, share what you know, share your feedback. You can also register for our live Q&A session that we're going to be doing on September 23rd, which will be a 90-minute session where you can ask all of your questions. And we will do our best to answer as many of them as possible. And I think our last housekeeping note is just a quick update on the upcoming deep dive sessions that we're offering. We hope you'll join us tomorrow for our deep dive on inclusion and accessibility that Ryan and Becky from Events by Lady K are going to be hosting. We have Making It Flow on September 10th, which is all about story and design as a part of your events. Practice Makes Perfect on September 15th that my colleague Tom will be leading. And then our final deep dive on the 17th of September about virtual giving. You can register for all of those at feedthespark.eventbrite.com. Certainly hope to see you at some of those. All right, so let's dig in. Just some context setting for why we're here today. I think if, most organizations like Pollen, like I think pretty much everybody on this call, when COVID hit, we were all scrambling to cancel, postpone, reschedule our events. And I think we all kind of figured out like, okay, virtual events, these are a real thing. This is going to be here for a while. So wanting to figure out, what tools to use, what purpose our events should have, when we should schedule our virtual events, and how to keep people engaged and battle that Zoom fatigue that has become all too real. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create this event, because we all kind of felt like we were in the same boat and needed to figure this out together. And then, as I mentioned, this pandemic doesn't appear to be going anywhere anytime soon. I know from Pollen's point of view, we're not planning on any in-person events for next year, even. If things change, we'll reevaluate that. But as Ryan spoke to at our first session, within the industry, most people are planning for the next 6 to 18 months to be virtual events. So we really need to get good at this, right? So that's why we're here today. And then I know there's a lot of folks out there that are, hosting webinars and sessions on hosting virtual events. So you may be asking yourselves, why is Pollen and Event by Lady K hosting this? For both of our organizations, we really put a huge amount of focus on beautifully designed events with very compelling topics, challenging conversations, amazing speakers. We give a lot of thought to universal design, which is why Ryan's going to be talking about inclusion and accessibility tomorrow, and audience engagement. So that's a little bit about us. It's just baked into everything that we do. And Ryan and I have actually been working together for going on 6 years now. This is us at the first event that we produced together, Bush Connect, in 2014. And since then, Ryan and I at our respective organizations have been producing dozens of events together. So we like each other. We work well together. Okay, head nod, great. Just wanted to make sure you still felt that way, Ryan. Thank you. And just a few examples of some of the Pollen events that we've hosted. So as I mentioned, we tackle some really complex, thorny topics that really get people talking and listening to one another. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see a bunch of people engaged in deep conversation with one another. We also put a lot of thought and energy into sustainable, meticulous design. In the bottom right are some of the print materials that we produced for our Work Redux Care event. We always think about the materials we produce for our events to be things that people keep. So like that little pack of tissues, for example, or creating art into really beautiful posters that people can take home. So that's definitely something that we pay attention to. And hosting virtual events, it's new for us. We started in mid-March with our You OK series, where we featured a lot of different artists and small business owners, and really engaged in different ways with our audience. In the upper right-hand corner is Ainga Bokamba, who is an amazing visual artist, painter. She has a studio in Northeast Minneapolis. And we always like to involve artists in our events. So we actually had her do a virtual tour of her studio space during one of our events, which was really fun. So I'll turn it over to Ryan for a minute to share a few details about some of the work that they do.
Thanks, Julie. And I absolutely adore that we get to continue to collaborate together over the years. It's such a delight. And like Julie said, our first together was called Bush Connect, powered by the Bush Foundation, to inspire, equip, and connect leaders from across the region. And we brought together 1,100 attendees, 89 speakers for 53 sessions. And it was a great day. And this fall would have been year 5 of the event, and due to COVID, it's actually been postponed. So like all of you, we're trying to figure out how to make certain things translate to online, and how to know when things sometimes are better to be left in person. Events by Lady K, over my career, we've primarily partnered with mission-driven clients to create mission-centered events, such as conferences, convenings, galas, celebrations. We've partnered with Pollen to do a fashion show for social entrepreneurs, hosted community engagement sessions structured like dinner parties, gatherings of all sizes that further great work that folks like y'all are doing. Our work centers the most marginalized at the core of the process and builds inclusion into every aspect of the event. That's the universal design that Julie mentioned. And while we're based in Minneapolis and enmeshed in this region, our work has taken us all around the country to make attendees feel welcome, celebrated, and included. The images on the screen on the upper left are the US Bank Field for the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota Centennial last fall. The center on the top photo is 5 panelists of various genders and races on a panel in Tucson, Arizona. The upper right picture is the Headwaters Foundation for Justice Gala at the Depot Pavilion here in Minneapolis. The lower right is the reception at the MoPop, Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle for Unity Summit with Change Philanthropy. And the lower left and center is a photo from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar swearing in celebration in Washington, DC. So we've been delighted to work with a ton of amazing organizations to bring their events to life. And like Julie said, virtual events are here to stay. As she said, our industry's forecast is 18 months or more where there will be limitations on in-person gathering. As I mentioned, a lot of our clients have either postponed or, we've all figured out how to go virtual together. But we know that virtual events are here to stay. So even if you can host an in-person event, the safety procedures you need to have in place ultimately, we think, detract from the benefits of being in the event and seeing each other. We are excited about the possibility of hybrid events when it is safer to gather in little larger numbers. So a combination of virtual and in-person events, where it can provide gatherings that have a glimmer of what we're accustomed to. And I think some additional benefits that we're still processing and thinking of. So for example, the inclusion of those who've always been immunocompromised and can't be around crowds of any size. For those who suffer from PTSD or survivors of assault for whom large crowds feel unsafe. And folks on the autism spectrum for whom loud noises and sensory needs are overwhelming. And so with a hybrid model, they'll be able to participate more fully. So there is hope, and we are excited about embracing this future and how it can continue to benefit all of us in the long run.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive in. First, we're going to talk about engagement. So the image on the left side, again, is from a Pollen event where there are lots of folks at tables engaging in conversation. And then, so we went from that to this image on the right of our Are You OK virtual event series, where we're trying to foster connection through a computer screen. It is really hard to replicate the magic that we had with our in-person events around engagement and human connection. It's really hard to do that in a virtual setting. But the good news is people are really craving that human connection in whatever form they can get it. So while it's difficult and complex to do in a virtual setting, it is possible. So we're gonna go through an overview of some of the engagement tools that we shared during last week's general overview session. I'm gonna try and go through these relatively quickly since we've covered all of them, but for the folks who are new to the call today, we did wanna cover off on these. So if you were with us last week, bear with us, grab some water, take a 3-minute snooze or something. Don't snooze, stay engaged. Okay, so starting off with housekeeping and expectation setting. So like we did at the beginning of today's session, it's really important to kind of let people know what's gonna be happening during the event and what they can expect. And then setting those expectations of what people can what they will be experiencing through the course of the event. And all of that really helps to foster that sense of connection, and just keep people really plugged into the event. So some of, some examples of those housekeeping notes that are useful for folks is, how to use the different platform features, like renaming yourself in the participant list, where to find chat, how to turn on closed captioning, how to turn on your video, things like that. And then obviously, sharing an agenda of how the flow of the event is very helpful for people and keeps them engaged throughout the event. Again, about chat, I talk about chat a lot because it's one of my favorite parts about virtual events. It probably has a little something to do with my old AOL days, and instant messenger. So it's a great tool, right, for engagement. So the image on the left is of people using chat to like introduce themselves, share where they're dialing in from. The image in the middle is an example of some attendees sharing resources, and asking questions, and the image on the right is kind of responding to some of those questions. So there's lots of different ways that people can interact with each other through chat. I think it's always worth noting, if you're worried about security, Zoom bombing and things like that, you can disable chat for security purposes. And it's also worth noting that you can control how your attendees or who they can chat with. So they can chat only to panelists or to everyone. And also, if you're using private chat, don't worry, it doesn't show up in the host chat. So if you have things to say and you want to do it privately, your words are safe. Just wanted to mention that as well. Breakout rooms, also a really great engagement tool, especially if you are planning on some small group discussions, or you want people to have an opportunity to like workshop an idea or a plan. You can, in Zoom, set the number of people that you want for each breakout room. We recommend 4, 5, 6 people, just so that everyone has time to say hi and share what they wanted to share with one another. We feel like once you get up to 10 people, it starts to get really hard for everyone to engage. And then you also have an option with Zoom to either randomly put people into rooms without any distinction of any kind, or if there are specific groups of people that you want to be working together, like maybe you have a working team that's working on a particular project, you can assign folks to individual rooms. It does take a little bit more time on the back end, so that's worth noting. It's not, with the random assignment, Tom just presses a button and voila, it happens. But with assignments, it's a little trickier. And then we also definitely recommend having facilitated conversations for your breakout rooms, being able to share discussion prompts to keep the conversations going, having hosts that are there to help the conversation move forward. And also, if you're a Zoom host or a co-host, you can bounce in to different breakout rooms and just, check in with folks, see how they're doing, make sure the conversation is productive. And then our final recommendation on breakout rooms is to do them towards the beginning or the middle of the event, when people are most engaged. Usually if you're doing a breakout room, like at the end of an event, people will, a little bit more likely to check out and just sign off. So do it sooner rather than later. The Q&A feature is only available in Zoom webinars. And just a real quick sidebar, we talk about Zoom a lot because it's one of the best platforms and the one that we use the most. There's lots of different features and different platforms, but just a note about that. So Q&A functionality is only available in Zoom webinars. There's a couple of ways that you can respond to questions. So you can monitor the Q&A that is coming in and pitch that question to your presenter or your panelist and have them answer audibly as they speak. Or if the question is maybe an easier one that's not super complex, you can also just type your answer into the Q&A functionality, and all of your participants will be able to see that. There's also, the option to use the raise hand feature, which folks can find in the participants tool. There's a, oops, I have too many mouses open, sorry. So if you click on participants and hit the more button, you'll see a little waving hand, which is a way that people can let the host know that they have a question, and then you can call on people to ask their questions. And don't forget about social media. Great platform to have people submit questions. So you could create a Twitter hashtag, for example, and have people submit their questions on Twitter. There's also a fun Instagram story question sticker that you can use, where people can submit questions, and then you can respond live or kind of come back to it. Just make sure you let people know when you'll be responding to those questions so that they don't miss that. And then I think the last tool we wanted to go over before we get into some of the newer content is polls. So we've explored a few options. These are the three that we have some experience with. Great tool for engaging your audience. So Mentimeter, Slido, and Zoom polling for meetings. We'll start first with Mentimeter. So there's a lot of options with Mentimeter. You can do live polling, word clouds, quizzes, Q&A. I also discovered this week that they have a whole folder full of templates that you can use with different like icebreaker questions and work group questions. So it's a really great resource to plug in. It also integrates really nicely with PowerPoint and Google Slides and Keynote. And pretty affordable. We're using the free option, and then it goes all the way up to $24.99 a month. So now we're gonna do a little poll demonstration. I'm super excited about this one, y'all. You'll see why. Okay, so if you open up a browser and go to mentimeter.com, that's MENTIMETER.com, and enter the code 7470350. And Ryan, if you could maybe put that in the chat just in case for backup. There is a poll there for you to vote for the cutest fur baby. Disclosure, they are my fur babies. Okay, so we'll give everybody just a couple of seconds to log in and cast their vote. And then Tom, we'll share the results. I'm sitting on pins and needles. I hope you all agree with me. Tom, can you pull up the results from the poll? One second, everybody. There we go. Ah, yes, I think Millie won. It looked like Millie won. Yay! Excellent choice, everybody. Oh, Parker's gonna be so sad. So just a fun way to utilize polls. They're great for icebreakers and just, fun, whatever. You can do more serious stuff, obviously, but I agree with the 13 of you who said, how could I possibly pick one? It is hard. All right, thanks everybody for indulging me. I will make sure Millie knows that she is loved and adored. All right, so moving on to the next poll option, we've got Slido. Similar to Mentimeter, lots of different, options for interactive polls. They do have the option of allowing attendees to upvote on different responses or questions. So if a lot of folks are submitting questions, people can vote on which one they're most interested in hearing a response to. And just another way for people to stay engaged. This one's way more expensive than Mentimeter, so they do have a free option, but it goes all the way up to $200 a month. And then lastly is the Zoom polling for meetings. The nice thing about this is that it's a built-in feature. So you don't have to switch to like a different screen. It just kind of pops up. The only downside is that it only allows a single or multiple choice question. So just a little bit more limited in what you can do there. All right, now on to the new stuff. So if you were taking a snooze, now would be a good time to rejoin. come back. Okay. So also wanted to talk about communications. This is a great way to keep your audience engaged and communicating with them both before and after the event. So I know a lot of folks send like a reminder email 48 hours before the event. And if you use Eventbrite, it's automated, but you can also edit it. So it's a good tactic for kind of, drumming up some excitement, letting people know that you're looking forward to the event and to seeing them, how folks can submit questions, what they can expect. It's a little bit like, housekeeping that you can do in a pre-event communication. And then after the event, things like asking folks for feedback on the event via a survey, sharing resources, and something that Pollen does is that we share our attendee contact information after the event so that people can continue to, build networks with folks and continue the conversation. We do ask people to opt in during registration so that we're not sharing information without permission. So that's another thing that you can consider. Reflection time. We covered on this briefly last week, but I think it's just important to note that, we're all holding a lot right now. we're doing our jobs. We're living through a pandemic. A lot of us are working on social change. Some of us are parents, fretting over the new school year. So I think people just appreciate a moment or two to process what they're hearing, what they're learning, how it applies to their work, even if it's just, a brief moment to like jot down some ideas or some time to go into a breakout room and, just share what people are learning in a workshop setting, for example. So just try to build in some of that reflection time into your virtual events so people have some space to breathe. And then social media as a way to stay engaged, obviously a great engagement tool, definitely applies to virtual events as well. Great way for people to be able to share what they're learning, ask questions. If you're broadcasting to Facebook Live, for example, being able to utilize the comments there and allow people to engage with the content. Obviously, hashtags on Twitter, they are still a thing. Recommend that those are short and relevant to your event. And if you're doing perhaps an annual conference, adding the year so that it distinguishes year over year. And definitely do your research on Twitter first. Make sure that your hashtag is not part of some other social moment. Or if it is, think of a different hashtag that distinguishes it. Also important to note that if you're going to use social media for engagement in this way during your virtual events, to have someone on staff who can help monitor those channels and respond. Nobody wants to comment and avoid. So if you have somebody on staff who can hop on to Facebook Live or monitor the Twitter hashtag and respond to folks, that's always a great tactic. All right, now we're going to move into gamification. Very fun and exciting thing that Ryan's going to lead us through. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks for all that brilliance, Julie. So I'm going to run through these a little quickly, but feel free to screenshot them, refer back to the recording later. There will be a document after this with links to all of these that we'll share out, both in the chat and in the follow-up email. So you don't have to try to take down the URLs right now to save some note-taking scribbling. But wanted to talk about some ways to add some extra kind of fun to an online event. We think these could work for a lot of different kinds of format events. So keep them in mind for your upcoming gathering, whatever it might be. The first is adding trivia or games to your meeting or your friend's night. Sassy Lassie Events, based here in the Twin Cities, has done some great virtual programming, women-owned, LGBT-owned company, and you can do many classic game shows renamed to avoid copyright issues. So survey says, prices the right price instead of the prices right. Charity games, stay-at-home scavenger hunt, and some other team building pair things. You can also hire a working 9 to 5 drag queen as your MC if you would really like to make your event that much more fabulous. So check out Sassy Lassie. Next one we've got is a virtual escape room, which some friends and I just signed up for, and I'm really excited to take part in this next month. They have a bunch of different themes, from superheroes, villains, as shown in the photo, time pirates, playground, veterinarian office, and saving Sherlock. It can accommodate 3 to 200 people. They recommend not a huge group, but you could do it across a larger audience. It uses Zoom as the platform, so it is a little more intuitive, and we're familiar with some of those pieces, and it's relatively affordable, all things considered, at $99 a session for however many people you'd like. Can check out some of their themes and photos on their website and enjoy the clue solving. Next up, we have Green Card Voices and Virtual Story Stitch. Green Card Voices is an awesome nonprofit based in the Twin Cities, lifting up the voices of immigrants and their experiences. And this is a really great deck of cards that goes through and will prompt you on connecting through stories. So it's geared towards connecting across difference. They got some social media buzz a couple years ago because AOC uses this deck with her team to build rapport and relationship building, really is what it's about. So check out their website to donate. They're asking for donations to participate, basically. So fund their really important work and help your team and event continue with storytelling. And then next up, we've got a virtual photo booth. So kind of like a virtual step and repeat for doing online fundraisers or conferences, but is really fun for any kind of event. The general flow of it is that using either your computer camera or your phone or tablet, you take a couple photos via your camera, you apply a branding interface, and then you can share them on social media. You can create a gallery after the fact. It can create a really nice unifying effect for folks when you're disparate across the city, the state, the region, or the country, or the globe. And can be a nice effect of that. So this can also be a nice thing for some of you looking to have sponsor recognition at some of your events that can be co-branded as an element of that. The company that I've seen this do really well is the Slow Motion booth. You can check out their website there or email Chris, and he can help answer all of your other questions. And then last but certainly not least, is just taking breaks, getting creative to move and laugh. So some groups that we've seen do this really well and would recommend connecting with: the Blackout Improv Troupe, Theater of Public Policy, hire a DJ, pay your artists for their work and their time and their talent, or create a playlist yourself on Spotify or another platform of choice. Put a tune on for your 10 to 15 minute break, dance it out, stretch it out, and just enjoy the energy that can bring, and can get silly with each other on camera as that feels comfortable and safe, but it can be a nice help, opportunity to just build rapport and show off some of your dance moves. So, again, we'll share out the link with all of these elements. Oh, Julie just put it in the feed, thank you. And again, it'll be in the email and things like that. So thank you all. Back to you, Julie.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, so we're going to spend just a couple more minutes on a few more engagement things and then move into our next section. So don't forget about creativity when it comes to engaging your audience. So Pollen's a media arts organization. Creativity is baked into every single thing that we do. So we think about this a lot, especially when it comes to our events. So think about including artists into your programming. You can hire musicians and poets and singers, even healers, which we did quite a lot with our Are You OK virtual series, to start off your events. Invite them to be a part of your speaking lineup, panelists, keynote speakers. As I mentioned earlier, inviting artists to give like virtual tours of their studios is a great way to keep things kind of light and creative. If you're hosting a multi-day event of some kind, think about using creative activities as your breaks. So maybe it's a writing workshop, or some reflective time to just draw or sketch, or inviting a healer of some kind to maybe lead a meditation or a yoga session. So lots of different ways to infuse creativity into your virtual events. Please pay your artists. Exposure does not pay the bills. I have to say it every single time. Okay. Oh yes, and swag. Oh, this is fun part. So we've been trying to think a little bit more about, especially for Pollen with our in-person events, we always created these beautiful, posters and takeaways that people could bring home and decorate their office with. And we really miss being able to do that. So think about ways that you can still incorporate some swag into your virtual events, like mailing things out in advance. So maybe sending a little token of appreciation to your donors, creating some sort of event promotion materials that you can send out to your attendees in advance. Maybe it's workshop materials or discussion guides or a notebook. Everybody loves a good notebook. Looking at you, BushCon. Or if you're doing a multi-day event, think about maybe sending a care package in advance that has like some drinks and snacks to keep people going throughout the day. And I know that, print production manufacturing costs can get prohibitive. So don't forget about digital options. You can maybe do a branded Zoom background, or a temporary profile that people can post on their social media channels. Maybe creating some event graphics that people could print at home and still be able to decorate their home office. So lots of ways to make your event attendees feel special and appreciated. I wanted to include just a couple of examples of some local companies. And I should caveat this by saying local to me right now is Minneapolis and St. Paul. I'm sure there's some great organizations in greater Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota that do this too. So think about like who are the local craft makers in your community that you could maybe purchase some items from. So Minnie and Paul has some great options. The Minneapolis Craft Market has shifted all of their makers products onto a website, so you can purchase things there too. So show some love for the local creative community. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan for a quick update on some facilitation techniques too.
Yes, and so one of the things to go with your beautifully designed and engaging event is to strongly facilitate it, because we think that with strong facilitation, it creates better engagement. So these online environments, while we're 5 months in, still aren't super intuitive for everyone. There is still a learning curve and fluency of the platform, but also still the content and how we engage with that and with each other. So invite people in, again, show them the ropes, describe how things will work, give a little more processing time. And just as you might have a greeter at an in-person event or a room monitor in a workshop, have them virtually too, to answer questions on the fly. The conference call stereotype of where everyone talks over each other and who's the sorry you go the things can be really solved with having the host monitor muting all, calling on folks to unmute themselves, and just taking charge of keeping things moving. Everyone can always share a giggle when one of us starts to talk and forgets to unmute ourselves, but it can help keep things moving along. And again, giving folks their space and kind of feeling supported in the way of exploring the platform, getting to know each other, and again, engaging with your content. For interactive engagement, pose a question, and then here are some tools to use for folks to respond as a way to do engagement. So things like Google Jamboard, Google Slides and PowerPoint, and adding Post-it notes, sort of a virtual flip chart and Post-it exercise, if you will. Zoom's annotation, you can also have, if it's a smaller group in particular, you can enable that option where folks can circle things or type in on a screen. and kind of make it your own image. You can save it later and keep them in the same way that you can take home a flip chart piece at the end of the event in person. Again, the bit.ly link includes resources to two in particular really great resources on how to be a facilitator from some social movement organizations that I greatly adore, to just, whether it's for you, whether it's to someone you designate in your organization, someone you hire. There are, in the same way you can hire an artist, you can still hire an MC to help support your event too. So you don't have to feel like all of the burden is on your organization. And whoever the facilitator, that generally should be their only job, so that they can focus on reading the room, seeing if you've got videos on, seeing how people are reacting. They can monitor chat, they can be doing all of the magic that they do in their minds to synthesize and check in with everyone, but that they're not also having to do 17,000 other things helps a lot too. So I will leave it at that and hand it back to Julie.
Thank you, Ryan. All right. I just did a little quick time check and realized that we have got to pick up the pace because we have a lot that we want to cover. So I'm going to try and move us a little bit more quickly because we have two guest speakers with us today that I really want you all to hear from. So we're going to dive into mission connection. So obviously events are a great way to keep your most avid supporters connected to the work that you're doing. So even if it's reserving a few minutes as a part of your virtual event to share some updates about your organization or your company, so that folks know what's going on, or even thinking about creating a virtual event that is specifically for that purpose. At Pollen, we're exploring some ideas around doing like some virtual dinners with our major donors to share some updates with folks. And obviously, your events are how people see your mission in action too. So it's a really great way to keep folks engaged. Mentioned that, sharing updates. I'm going to keep us going. Okay. Also using ambassadors and influencers to keep folks connected to your mission. So think about like, who are some of your strongest supporters, the people who like evangelize your brand, for example. Invite them to be part of your virtual programming. Give them a few minutes to share about the way that your organization has impacted them or their community. Think about doing maybe a virtual house party. So I used to be really involved in local political organizing, and house parties were always like the best way to get a candidate in front of new supporters and donors. Think about maybe doing that in a virtual setting where you invite an influencer or someone who's really well connected to your organization to invite some friends to a private Zoom and share a little bit more about your organization as a way to keep them connected to your mission. So just a couple of ideas around that. And now I'm gonna introduce Peter Strong. I was so excited to get to this, Peter. Sorry, we took a little longer than we thought. So Peter is here with us today from Racing Magpie to share a few words about their virtual residency program. When I talked with Peter about this program, it just seemed to me to be the perfect example of a mission connection in a virtual setting. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter to share a little bit about what they've been up to.
Thanks a lot, Julie. Hi, everyone. Peter Strong, co-owner of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City, South Dakota. I don't have cute pet pictures. I apologize, but I'll do my best. So part of our mission, what we do is we are all about uplifting and amplifying the voices of Native artists locally, regionally, nationally, occasionally internationally when we have a chance. And we have space here in Rapid City. We have studios and community space, and we're centered around the Lakota idea of being a good relative. Whatever we can do to support what's already happening, that's what we want to do. And in March, we were very quick to close our physical space to protect our community, and reach out to our artist community and find out what was needed and what how were they doing, because as some of us know, artists were some of the worst hit, or were hit very hard right off the bat with canceled gigs and canceled markets and sales dropping off to nothing. And we just happened to have a tiny bit of funding and a program that popped up that seemed to fit the needs of the artists, which was to get visibility, to learn from each other, to get a little bit of cash, you know, not much, but as much as we could, was this idea of a virtual residency. We saw a physical residency on the West Coast do it, and we jumped in and did this. As you see, by the end of March, we had a deadline for the visual on screen, and we kept it open to all West River creatives, and we were able to select 6. So now we can jump to the next one, the next slide. And you see, we got a pretty good reaction from the community. We had all different mediums. We have a jewelry maker, clothing designer, photographer, a doll maker, someone who makes Lakota hand game sets. So it was a really cool program. If you go check out our Facebook, we did live sessions with all of them. We gave all the artists the ability to, you know, define how they wanted to interact with the public. They could do short how-to sessions. They could do 2-hour lectures on Lakota history, aesthetic theory, and jewelry design. You know, we really launched in with, like, we just want to share and we want to connect people. We were able to use Zoom. We learned about the easy feature to go Facebook Live. We were just amazed when one of our artists was able to have 2 cameras on their end at the same time, and we had to navigate the magic of making that happen, you know, using a phone as a camera, and as well as their computer screen, and sharing that with the other artists. It was really a great opportunity. We put them up on YouTube as well, and then it was a good success. We had artists, we sat down with them at the end, and we asked what worked, what didn't work, what would you like to see more of for the next round. We got feedback of what we've heard on these webinars, you know, shorter bits of time. We got a request that the artists wanted more time to connect with each other specifically, and really thinking about their goals and what they want to do. But we were able to connect to another partner organization on the Cheyenne River Reservation. We put out this call for Native artists specifically. The deadline is tomorrow. So you'll see another round coming out. We actually added a piece. We took down the live, going live pieces of it. We increased some weekly engagements with each other. And this year we actually were able to connect a mentorship component, thinking about family and thinking about community and relatives. On the Cheyenne River Reservation, we're going to be pairing an adult artist with a youth artist, and two pairs on the reservation, and putting their work out there as well, starting next month. And I think, you know, that again ties back to our mission. We had to be nimble, and we had to roll with this and really work with artists and really understand their needs and somehow mesh the two together. So hopefully between this and our other programs that either have shifted to going all virtual or are actually being designed in a virtual way, you see something that helps you as well. So I think with that, in the interest of time, I'm going to end there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Really appreciate you sharing the virtual residency program with everyone here. Please do check it out on their Facebook page or YouTube channel, kind of get a sense of what they were doing. All right, I'm going to keep us going. We had some other activities planned, but unfortunately, I want to make sure we get through the content. So our final section is focused on human connection. So this is, you know, how your attendees are engaging with each other. I think there's a huge amount of power in the individuals who share a connection to your organization, and it's up to us to help foster that. So, you know, for Pollen, if it weren't for our Pollen community, we would have really no reason to publish stories or host events. So it's really all about the people. And we've heard people say, like, after they come to a Pollen event, I found my people. So it's really an important aspect of events, and something that you can still, you know, foster that sense of connection and community through a virtual setting. So I'm not going to harp on chat again. You guys, everybody knows that we love chat, okay, right? Prompts and knowledge sharing. Breakout rooms. I'm gonna, maybe I'll share in the resource document after the event. I have a whole slew of facilitation tips that I wanted to share with folks about, you know, what kind of facilitators you want to bring in, how they can keep the conversation going, prompts and all of that. So we'll include all of those facilitation tips in the follow-up email so that we have some time for that. Another real quick note on conference tracks. If you're doing like an all-day conference, you can group people together and have them like go to sessions together, breakout rooms, introduce them before the event so that they can build those connections in a smaller setting. Networking rooms, I think I saw in the chat earlier that Jamie had shared that like a board that she serves on now opens up their Zoom 30 minutes prior so that people can just like chat and connect. So that's definitely something to look into. Feed Loop, which is a platform we briefly talked about last week, has an awesome networking platform. It also is a little slightly creepy, I'm not gonna lie. There's a thing in there that it'll tell you like who else is in a virtual room with you and like send a push notification for you to connect with that person. It's a little strange. So we'll share a little bit more about that in the resource document as well. So now I'm gonna introduce Golnessa Ashkiali, also from Racing Magpie, who is here to share a few words about their wellness workshops that they've been hosting. So I'll turn it over to you, Golnessa. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks, fam. Good to see you all. I want to be brief also. There's some slides that Tom's going to run through. It's just art. The art was created, the poster art was created by Oglala Lakota artist Mike Tubols. This wellness workshop series, I work for Racing Magpie. I was hired by Peter and Mary to as their lead facilitator for the Creative Community Leadership Institute, naming that because there's fam on here who are cohort members. I see you. I'm excited to be with you soon, inshallah. And I also work for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the South Dakota branch of that. And so it's been cool to do this wellness workshop series and like merge, right, the two orgs that I work for. I don't have anything like earth shattering to offer to you. What I want to name is stuff that's really obvious, but I think also worth naming, right? We can't successfully encourage human connection if that's not prioritized, right? So when you're hosting things as a facilitator, as a host, as an educator, like whatever it is that you're bringing people together around, if you don't prioritize human connection, it's not going to happen, right? So it has to be prioritized. When I'm facilitating, in person or virtual, right? I'm continuously naming and encouraging that people take care of themselves constantly, right? There is no pressure for you to be on camera. If we're on Zoom, you need to eat, you need to drink, you need to use the restroom, you need to take care of your kids, right? Do anything that you need to do to take care of yourself. We can't prioritize connection if people don't have a relative sense of security and safety, as much as we're able to offer and encourage in people. I think too, I've seen like, I know Ryan's going to talk about accessibility stuff tomorrow too. I know that people join Zoom meetings and don't have their accessibility needs met, and it's not ever even named, right? So at least naming and encouraging that people reach to publicly or privately, I would say like privately message us if there's something that you need that we're not offering, right? So that we can try to make sure that we're meeting everybody's needs. And take time to do introductions, right? If you want people to be connected to each other, you need to create the time to allow for people to know each other and to get comfortable, like relatively comfortable in this space, whether you use the chat option like Julie did today, Julie and Ryan did, or you have time, depending on your time, right? If people can do that, unmute, use the chat option, different entry points for people, right? Not just one option. Some people are not going to be comfortable speaking on camera or off camera, right? So they'll use the chat option to offer introduction. And some people are not going to want to do that either. And guess what? That's just going to have to be okay. It's fine, right? I always name that just because we're not sharing physical space, it doesn't mean that people feel any less anxious about sharing space with one another. And Zoom anxiety is a real thing. So I consistently name my own anxiety, my own excitement, my own nerves, right? When I'm facilitating to normalize that. So there's two like big takeaways that I want to name, and then I'm done. I don't have anything else to offer you. Sorry. I'm not sorry. What I'm going to offer next is, I know that in my experience as a classroom teacher, I constantly was reminded on a daily basis that none of the content that I have to offer is more important than the well-being of the young people who are in my care, right? Nothing, literally nothing that I have to say or offer is more important than people's well-being and safety and security. So it's an ego thing, right? And it's an insecurity thing of our own that we want to make sure that people are tapped in and tuned in. All we can do is offer care with the utmost sincerity and offer our content with the most sincerity and preparation, and people are going to show up how they show up, right? And the other thing that I want to name that's connected to that, I know I speak for myself as an abolitionist educator. I constantly have to push back against my internalized like conditioning to police people and police the way that people show up. We cannot police the way that people show up. We can offer what we offer, and people are going to show up the way that they show up. So we got to just let go of our need to control. We have to let go of our need to like think that we can manage the way that people show up to a physical or virtual space, and let people do what they're going to do, right? We're not police. That's all I'm going to say about police. I have more to say, but I won't. So again, like Peter named, at Racing Magpie, our mission is to be good relatives, right? And that's rooted in Lakota values. That speaks to me as an Iranian settler here in the occupied territories. So we're also super intentional, and Ryan's going to speak to this tomorrow too about inclusion, right? But we're intentional about the language that we use, about how we speak about place, about how we speak about self, right? How I talk about myself, how Peter talks about himself as a white man, as a white settler here, and make sure that at every turn, Lakota relatives are prioritized and that they feel seen and held and heard, right? And that it's okay for us to be intentional about prioritizing Indigenous relatives, and that is connected to our mission. That's it, y'all. That's all. Those are my bits. It's good to be with you, and it was wonderful to receive all the information and gems that Julie and Ryan shared. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Golnessa. Thank you so much. That was a lot. I think we need to have maybe a 6th deep dive with Golnessa and Peter. All right, I know we're over time, so we're just gonna wrap up really quick. I shared in the chat some ways that you can support Racing Magpie. Please do. You can find them on PayPal and Facebook to support Native artists and their work. We hope to see you tomorrow at Ryan's session on inclusion and accessibility. And we'll be sharing out the link to today's session in the next day or so. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow, and we'll be back at it on September 10th. Thank you everyone so much. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for your patience. Sorry for going over time. Bye.
Thanks everyone.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you, Golnessa. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you,
Thanks so much.
And Ryan and Tom. Appreciate you.